Now, in a previous video, I compared the Instax Mini 40 to the Fuji Instax SQ6. And the SQ6, my favorite instant camera. However, I'm really starting to like this one as well. So in this video, we're going to compare the Instax camera to another instant camera, but this time it's going to be a Polaroid camera. Now, Polaroid have been making instant cameras for a long time, and this is their latest instant camera, the Polaroid Go. It's tiny and it's just ridiculously cute. So I wanted to see which one is the better option. So in this video, we're going to be taking pictures with both cameras to see which one is the one that you should buy. Right, so let's quickly run through some of the specifications and differences between both of these cameras. First thing is the size and weight. Now, in terms of weight, they don't seem that far off. However, the size of both of these cameras is significantly different. The Polaroid is much smaller, and that could be beneficial for some because, well, it's just a little bit easier to transport. You can shove it in a bag, shove it in a coat pocket, just so easy to carry this around. I love the fact that this is so small and so compact. If I'm not mistaken, this is the smallest instant camera that you can purchase right now. So brilliant design in that regard. The Instax Mini 40, it is a small camera, but you know, it's nowhere near as small as the Polaroid camera. Second thing is the Polaroid camera, you can control the flash. So if you want to switch the flash off on the Polaroid Go, you can do that. You've got a dedicated button on the top. Press that button, switch off the flash. You can control the lighting more effectively. If you're shooting in ambient lighting, or if you've got some really nice natural lighting, you can have the flash switched off. Can't really do that on the Instax Mini 40, so a bit of a pain in that regard. And this is something that I've complained about in pretty much every instant video so far. But yeah, Instax Mini 40, you can't switch the flash off. And the final major key benefit of the Polaroid camera is the fact that it's got autofocus. This is something which I think is pretty brilliant. Now, I've mentioned how I would love to see an Instax camera with autofocus features, but that's not something that I think is currently available, current production anyway. However, Polaroid does have a couple, if I'm not mistaken, at least two instant cameras that have autofocus features already built into them. So if you want an instant camera with autofocus, Polaroid is the one that you want to pick. And one little minor difference, you've got a little micro USB slot over here, which allows you to charge the camera directly from the camera. So you've got an internal battery. I just find that to be a little bit more convenient than having to faff around with batteries in the Instax Mini 40. So those are some of the key differences between the Instax Mini and the Polaroid. Obviously, they use different film stock. Polaroid is going to use Polaroid mini film, or whatever it's called, and the Instax camera is using Instax mini film as well. So those are the major differences. But what we're going to do now is we're going to take some pictures, because looking at the specifications on paper, that's one thing, but looking at the actual results, I think that's the deciding factor for most people. So we're going to take a few pictures between both of these cameras and see which one is the better camera. Okay, so now that we've taken a bunch of shots with both cameras, a few things I should say, that I've noticed between the two. First thing is ergonomics. Now, although the Polaroid has a much better viewfinder, like it's way more comfortable to look through this viewfinder than it is on this tiny viewfinder in the Instax camera, the ergonomics on this a little bit weird, because when you put this to your face, this thing sticks into your cheek, so just not quite as comfortable as the Instax camera with its thumb rest. Although the viewfinder, Polaroid, way better viewfinder. Second thing is the sound. Like when you take a picture with this camera, it's just so loud when the film comes out. The Instax camera, just much less obnoxious and just a little bit pleasing in terms of the sound that it makes when the film comes out. Third thing is the time that it takes for the film to develop. The Instax is so much faster. Within about 30 seconds, you can start to make out what the image looks like, and then within about a minute and a half, you can actually see the picture. Polaroid is taking really long for the film to develop. So I don't know why, but it's just taking like 5 to 10 minutes for the film to develop into the final image. So, you know, a little bit frustrating with that, because you just have to kind of wait And that's just one of those annoying factors about the Polaroid camera. And also the film size. The Polaroid film size, it's quite a bit smaller than the Instax Mini, so that might be something to consider. Yes, this is a much smaller camera, and the the tiny form factor might appeal to some of you, but film size is something that I think a lot of people should consider whenever they're buying their instant camera, because the fact that this is a little bit larger, I just find it to be a little bit more meaningful in comparison to the Polaroid. What we're going to do now is we're going to compare the actual film shots that we've taken. We're going to put them side by side, and then hopefully that can help you decide which one is better based on the results. So here we have all of the images opened up in Lightroom, and this first image that we're looking at was shot with the Instax Mini 40. The flash went off because you can't switch the flash off on the Mini 40 even when you're outside in bright daylight or bright conditions. So bit of a pain, because when you have the flash on, it does make the background a lot darker, so it doesn't really give a proper representative of what the scene looked like at the time. But Fujifilm, or the Instax camera, does a heck of a lot better than what the Polaroid does when the flash is switched on. I'm going to show you what they look like side by side. So this first comparison, this is with the flash on the Polaroid switched off. So great thing about the Polaroid is you can switch the flash off. However, the film, in my opinion, isn't that great. It doesn't have a lot of contrast. It has this magenta cast over it, and I had the film replaced by Polaroid because they said they had an issue with the batch. But even with the new batch, I had similar problems. So I'm not a fan of the Polaroid film. And if you switch the flash on, you can see just how much of an impact it makes on the ambient light. The Polaroid can only really expose for the flash, and then the background is just way too dark. You're not going to get much in the scene, and I'm not going to lie, I really, really hate that. Utterly hate that. Some of you may like that because it isolates the subject a little bit better, so that might be benefit to some of you, but I like having some context in Instax or instant film pictures, and the Polaroid, when you have the flash on, it just doesn't do that. Not a fan of that. Second comparison, same thing again. The Fujifilm flash went off and the Polaroid flash went off as well. This time still suffering issues with contrast. The Instax film looks a lot sharper, a lot better, even though it's not perfectly in focus. Like this is not in focus, and you can see how it's, well, you can clearly see it's out of focus, but despite that fact, still looks a heck of a lot better than the Polaroid film, because the Polaroid film, detail, clarity, it's still not that good. And also just the overall lighting and the way that it's been rendered, I think the Instax does a much better job. When you have the flash on for both of them, Instax does a lot better job. And even when you have the flash switched off on the Polaroid, it just doesn't have that contrast to look nice or appealing, really. Once again, we have the Polaroid image on the right over here, and I don't know what happened here, but the flash was switched off, and yeah, image looks terrible. It looks utterly terrible. The Instax image looks a lot better. The flash did go off, so it does make the background a lot darker, but still looks a heck of a lot better than the Polaroid Mini camera. However, when the flash came on for the Polaroid camera, it does look better, but it's still not quite as good as the Instax, just lacking that contrast. I know I messed up on the composition, but ignore the composition issues. We're just looking at the contrast and the way that it looks overall. The Instax camera just looks a lot better. And then we also took a couple of images with both cameras later that evening when it was getting a lot darker, and once again, I think that the Instax does a much better job overall. Polaroid, it just doesn't look that good. It doesn't have that contrast. It looks pretty blurry. I'm not a fan of that. This is with the flash switched off, and if we switch the flash on, I mean, it looks better, but it just looks way too dark and washed out. It has that magenta cast over it as well, which I'm not a fan of. So far, in my experience, the images coming from the Polaroid camera haven't been that great. Finally, I took a couple of pictures of my friend with continuous lighting, so in a more controlled scenario, and I think the Instax does a lot better. However, I think with an Instax camera like the SQ6, where you can switch the flash off, that camera would do a heck of a lot better in these kinds of scenarios. The fact that the flash came on does kind of cause some issues, but not a massive problem because the image still looks good. With the Polaroid, when you have the flash switched off, I don't know what happened here, but the colors are way, way off. So somehow the Polaroid just completely messed up the colors. Some of you may like this, but that's not what the colors are. The Instax is much more accurate when it comes to the colors. It's doing a far better job. So this is not a magenta cast. This is what the background color was, and obviously this is what his suit looked like. There was no green color cast or anything like that in the scene, so I don't know how or where this came from. And again, this is without the flash, but if you switch the flash on, it's just so dark. I don't know what happened here, but I'm not a fan. I'm really not a fan of how the Polaroid camera renders scenes, both with flash and with the flash switched off. So there you have it. That's how both the Polaroid and Fujifilm cameras compare against one another. And honestly, I'm so disappointed in the Polaroid because admittedly, I did come into this video with a bit of a bias in favor of the Polaroid. And the reason for that is because it ticks so many of my boxes. It's smaller, it's lighter, you can charge it internally, you can switch the flash off, and it's got autofocus, kinda. I mean, the camera itself on paper is such a good camera, but it just can't deliver the goods. The results from this camera are utterly terrible. In almost every scenario, the results that you get from the Polaroid Go are horrible. I absolutely hate the pictures from the Polaroid Go. They look horrible. Just miserable looking pictures when you have the flash switched on, and when you don't have the flash switched on, then it's just washed out magenta cast images. Just terrible looking results. I don't know why or how anyone could ever look at images from the Polaroid Go and think, yes, these are something that I want. I hate them. The Instax Mini 40, yes, you don't have as many controls. You can't switch the flash off. Bit of an issue, but you know what? It produces much better results in comparison to the Polaroid Go. So on that basis, yeah, it's a clear win for the Instax Mini 40. Easy win. I highly recommend the Instax Mini 40 over the Polaroid Go, especially when you consider the fact that the Polaroid Go film is more expensive. It's smaller, it's worse in terms of results, like horrible results, and it costs a heck of a lot more. It's like £1.20 per shot, as opposed to the Instax, which is only like 75 pence a shot. Massive gap in price there. So yeah, I mean, easy win for the Instax. I wish I had something nice to say about the Polaroid, but I don't. So yeah, the Polaroid versus Instax. Instax wins, and disappointing, I guess. But anyway, if you like this video, hit the like button, please subscribe, share this video, and I hope to see you all in the next one. Thank you.